I used to think working the graveyard shift at a corporate tech firm was just soul crushing. I didn't know it could be lethal. My name is Ryan, and I work as a late night data analyst for a logistics company headquartered in downtown Chicago. Our office is located in a sleek, modern skyscraper, the kind made entirely of glass, steel, and endless rows of identical cubicles that stretch out like a maze. On a regular day, the floor hums with the sound of hundreds of computers, murmuring voices, and the clinking of ceramic coffee mugs. But after midnight, the entire place turns into a total ghost town. Only a skeletal crew remains, scattered miles apart across 40 different floors. It happened last Thursday. It was 2:45 a.m., that specific hour of the night when exhaustion starts playing tricks on your mind. I had just finished compiling a massive data sheet, and my eyes were burning from the screen glare. Desperate for a caffeine kick, I stood up from my cubicle on the 14th floor to head to the main break room. The silence on the floor was heavy, punctuated only by the low, rhythmic drone of the HVAC system. As I walked down the long, carpeted aisle, I noticed how dimly lit the floor was. The automatic motion sensor lights had shut off in the unoccupied zones, leaving vast pockets of pitch-black darkness between the empty desks. I took the service elevator down to the 4th floor, where the 24-hour cafeteria and lounge were located. When the elevator doors chimed and slid open, I stepped out into complete darkness. That was my first mistake. The break room lights were supposed to be on 24/7. I pulled out my iPhone, flicking on the flashlight. The beam cut through the gloom, illuminating the empty vending machines and the rows of stacked plastic chairs. The air felt freezing, much colder than my floor, and it carried a faint metallic smell, like old pennies or dried blood. Thinking the night shift janitor had just turned off the lights by mistake, I walked over to the coffee machine. I tapped the touchscreen for an espresso. The machine whirred to life, but instead of coffee, it began pouring a thick, clear, odorless liquid into the paper cup. That was the exact moment a cold knot tied itself in my stomach. Something felt fundamentally wrong. Deciding to skip the coffee, I hurried back to the elevators and pressed the button for the 14th floor. The doors closed, the cabin trembled, and the digital display began counting up. 5, 8, 11, 14. Chime. The doors opened. I stepped out, breathing a sigh of relief. But as I walked toward my department, my jaw dropped. My desk was gone. In fact, all the cubicles were gone. The entire 14th floor was just a vast, empty concrete wasteland. There were no carpets, no computers, no ceiling tiles, just exposed wires hanging like dead vines and raw concrete pillars stretching into the shadows. Panicking, I spun around and ran back to the elevator. I mashed the button for the lobby. The doors shut. The elevator dropped rapidly, but when it opened, I wasn't on the ground floor. I was in a long, blindingly bright corridor that looked exactly like a sterile hospital hallway, smelling strongly of bleach. I stepped out, completely disoriented. I ran down the hall, turning corner after corner, but every turn led to the exact same hallway. It was an endless, maddening loop. That's when I noticed the silence had changed. The drone of the building's AC was gone. In its place was a low, distorted sound, like a human voice being played backward at a painfully slow speed. It was vibrating right out of the drywall. I pulled out my phone to call security, but there was no signal, no bars, no Wi-Fi. But right then, my phone buzzed. A text message popped up from an unlisted 10-digit number. It read, "You stepped off the axis. Do not look at the windows." My heart hammered against my ribs. Windows? I looked to my right. The hospital corridor had suddenly transitioned into a massive wall of floor-to-ceiling glass overlooking the city. But outside, there was no Chicago skyline. There were no streetlights, no traffic, no stars, and no moon. Outside the glass was just an absolute void-like blackness. And then I saw them. Reflected in the glass, standing directly behind me in the hallway, were silhouettes. They weren't ghosts. They looked like human figures made entirely of pure, staticky television snow. They didn't have faces, just shifting white pixelated patterns where their features should be. I froze, remembering the text. Do not look at the windows. But I was already looking right at their reflection. The moment I made eye contact with the reflection of the closest figure, its pixelated face violently contorted into a jagged, static-filled grin. The backward voice in the walls instantly blasted into a deafening shriek. The creatures didn't run toward me. They moved in glitches. 1 second they were 10 feet away. The next second they flickered 5 feet closer, like a corrupted video file. I didn't think. I turned and sprinted blindly down the looping corridor, tears of pure terror streaming down my face. Every time I passed a fluorescent light fixture, it exploded in a shower of sparks. Ahead of me, I spotted a heavy fire door marked Exit. I threw my entire weight against it, bursting through the frame. Suddenly, the warm glare of regular office lights hit my eyes. I fell forward onto a carpeted floor. The heavy hum of the air conditioning rushed back into my ears. I looked up, panting, drenched in sweat. I was back on the real 14th floor. My laptop was open on my desk, still glowing. My coworkers were sitting just a few cubicles away, typing away quietly. I checked my phone. The time was 2:46 a.m. Only one single minute had passed in the real world. I packed my backpack and left the building immediately. I haven't gone back to work since that night. HR thinks I'm taking mental health leave for stress, but they don't understand. I can't go back into that building. Because last night, as I was lying in bed in my apartment, my phone vibrated. It was a message from that same unknown number. It contained a single attachment. It was a photo of me, taken from a high angle, sleeping in my own bed, and written beneath, it was a line that has ensured I will never sleep in the dark again. You brought a piece of the shadow back with you. Look behind the closet.